but that 88 is pulling away.
Earnhardt, Johnson, Menard, Blaney. Third-generation star Dale Earnhardt Jr. brings him to the flag. Checkered flag waving. It's over. It's Earnhardt. Earnhardt trying to cover all spots.
Oh, yeah! Good job, Junebug.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. Checkered flag at Talladega.
Why is this one so much fun? Because your grin told so many stories on your cool-down lap.
It's just real emotional. I haven't won here in a long time. It was my daddy's birthday a couple days ago. Just real emotional, man.
My world.
And welcome to it, Dale Earnhardt Jr., NASCAR fans. And it's the race preview podcast for the final race of the season. It's actually just kind of now hitting me that we're about to wrap up another NASCAR season. You know, thankfully, I picked a sport and you picked a sport that has a very short off season. You know, and it makes it nice too, because for me, you know, I'm always glad to get to the end of the season. And, you know, regardless of how Dale Jr. runs, it's nice to have a break. It is. You know, I would not want NASCAR running year-round. And I know there are people that would want the NASCAR season to be shortened. I certainly wouldn't. I mean, that's what I love about NASCAR, is that you really do have a short off-season. And that off-season usually... Well, not usually, it does. That off-season consists of the holidays and taking a break and getting into a new year. And with what I do, being a radio talk show host, working in radio, it's nice because I can get geared up and start a new year and get through January, and NASCAR's not going on, and I can focus on work. And then by about the time that the Daytona 500 rolls around in Speed Weeks, I'm ready for NASCAR season to be here. You know, I've kind of got my legs under me at the radio station, and I'm ready to get with it. And so it's been a really good year too. And I think that we're going to cap off this season despite not being able to run for the championship. I think that if Dale Jr. had made it out of Talladega and that race was called the way that it should have been, he may have walked away with this championship based off of what happened last weekend in Phoenix. We'll talk a little bit about that. How the car is this weekend in Miami, we'll talk about that. There's a threat of rain again this weekend. Man, and that really stinks. I was really hoping that, and maybe we still will. As it stands right now, it looks like there's like an 80% chance of rain, but, you know, it's Florida. That weather can move through rather quickly, and, you know, there's just as much chance that it can rain as there is that it could move on, and we don't have that issue. Certainly we had that issue, and I was in the middle of it in Phoenix last weekend, and again, I'll talk a little bit about that. But before we dive headlong into the podcast, I just want to look back on the season a little bit and say that, for me personally, I'm really proud of this team. You know, there was some rough moments, and I was critical of Greg Ives and this team and some of the calls that were made on a couple of different races that I thought were really bad, and it seemed as if they got off at the start of the chase, unfortunately, that put them in a position where they had to go to Talladega and win it and just couldn't get it done. Would have gotten it done if it hadn't have been for what took place at the end of that race. But what I'm most proud of is that in these last couple of races, they really seem to have learned from their mistakes. The communication seems better between Greg Ives and Dale Jr., and it seems like they didn't allow those misfortunes and missteps to affect them. They learned from it, which is what you're supposed to do, and were able to move forward and make gains. And certainly that's what happened. I mean, that's what got them the win on Sunday, even though it was rain-shortened at Phoenix, and that's what has them qualifying ninth, getting into the third round, and having, I'll get ahead of myself, but they've got the fastest car this weekend. It's the same car they brought to Texas, and we know that if Dale Jr. hadn't smacked the wall with his right rear quarter panel during that race at Texas, he would have walked off with that race easily. And I'm convinced as well that if the rain hadn't come on that restart, the Dale Jr. would have driven away. Greg Ives during the Phoenix race even said, you know, rain or not, man, I made the adjustments. This car's good. You know, we're going to go and win this thing. But if I look back on the season, and I was thinking about this a little while ago, I've been busy just doing housework all day long, and actually have I have the Xfinity race on right now in the background. We're at lap 62 of 200, and I'm going to go watch that here in a little bit. I just got to kind of go into the background, and my intention was actually to sit down and watch that in its entirety, but I like having a race on when I do the podcast. It reminds me a lot of when I do my show. I have network I have the network news on my big screen in my studio during the show, and I like feeling like I'm kind of in the thick of it. So it's fun for me to have the race on, or a race on, while I'm doing the podcast. But as I was going about my daily duties today around the house so that I could sit on my butt the rest of the evening, I was thinking back on the season and was trying to think back to what the highlight of the season was for me personally as a Dale Jr. fan. And there's a couple of different things. From a victory standpoint, I'll talk about that second. From a personal standpoint in Dale Jr., he really showed himself to be the class act that he is, and why so many of us are fans. He's just a good dude, and that's just the bottom line. He's just a good guy. And for somebody that people could easily say had things handed to him, he didn't have things handed to him. He's earned what he has, and he deserves to be at Hendrick Motorsports and deserves to be the most popular driver every single year. He drives good, I mean, is he the best driver out there? No, I'm not going to be one of those Dale Jr. fans. I know there are Dale Jr. fans that say that Dale Jr. is the greatest driver. He's not, but you don't have to be the greatest driver to be the most popular guy in the sport either. And I think Dale Jr. is the complete package of a personality, of a celebrity, of an athlete, of a person, and a race car driver. He's displayed so much class this year when so many drivers could have easily legitimately just been pissed. After Talladega? I mean, not Talladega. Yeah, Talladega. After Talladega, I mean, seriously, he showed so much class after that race. It was awesome how much class he showed after that race, and all the circumstances that he's got into. He's never flown off the handle like he did when he was younger. And he's always been very open and honest, and even when he didn't advance forward, he's like, look, man, if we had done better at the two previous races, we wouldn't have been in the situation that we were in. When he won at Daytona, which is also my most memorable winning moment, despite how bad that wreck was, I kind of had to go back and forth between Talladega and Daytona, but Daytona was the one that I'm most proud of that team, and I'll explain why in a moment. But even when he won in Daytona in July, the first thing on his mind was the wreck that he saw in his rearview mirror. And nobody really talked about this, by the way. I'm listening to Dale Jr.'s in-car during that race when he won it. And he didn't celebrate at all, right? He was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I hope everyone's okay. And you got it. Nobody picked up on the fact that he didn't witness it because he was right next to it or behind it. He was just looking in his rearview mirror. I mean, he didn't even have a view to witness how bad it was. He just made an assumption based off the amount of, carnage that he assumed was happening. I mean, that could have just been a couple of cars wrecking and crashing of Dale Jr. looking in his mirror. I don't think that he knew or could tell, at least my opinion of it, that Austin Dillon's car had gone flying into the catch fence. I mean, maybe he did, but I just remember even when it happened going, he's just witnessing that through his rearview mirror and really has no idea how bad it really was, yet he acted like it was the worst wreck he'd ever seen and was immediately concerned. I mean, the guy is just classy. And that race in Daytona in July is the one that I'm most proud of that team. And, it's a restrictor plate race, and, I was glad to see him get the win at Phoenix. I would have liked to have seen it won without it being rain delayed. And even then he showed class, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of the whole team package, the pit row crew getting it done during that race, the amazing job that TJ Majors did calling that race, and that final lap, I still have it recorded. You know, I don't think I've ever seen him fight so hard to win a race as he did that one. I mean, it was a harder fight than the previous year's, 2014 Daytona 500. I mean, he had to fight all night long to win that race. And, Talladega that he won was a struggle too. But the Daytona race, man, that last lap is so impressive. And again, that's probably my most memorable moment of the season. My most memorable non-winning moment would have been for me personally. I got to go into the garage early in the morning on Sunday at Phoenix, and I hadn't been in the garage at a race since before Dale Jr. went to Hendrick Motorsports. And I did several times when I was in Atlanta, when he was still driving the Budweiser number 8 car, but I hadn't been in the garage in a while. And so it was cool to be able to go in there, and I just hung out, kept my distance from his garage, and just watched the guys work on the car. And TJ Majors was there, and I saw Gray Gives. I almost walked up and tried to get a selfie with him, because he seems like a pretty approachable dude. He was being interviewed by Sirius XM Satellite, the NASCAR show, the pre-race show, and I was just like, I don't want to bug him. And I followed the car through the inspection line and watched it go through the template and inspection, and got a photo right next to his car. I have a matching photo, by the way. I have a matching photo of me, and I'm actually looking at it right now on my desk. I need to put it side by side, but I have a photo just like it, taken about 11 years ago? I don't know, 10 years ago now? In Atlanta, next to his Budweiser car. And I got exactly the same shot next to the 88 car. And it was the winning car. And I just, look, you're a fan, you're listening to this. You know what it means. To be able to sit there or kneel down next to Dale Jr.'s car, even, next to meeting him, being able to be there and get a photo with the car, and then knowing that car won the race, despite the circumstances, was one of my own personal favorite moments. But the other moment would have been during the race when they knew the rain was coming, and it started to sprinkle. Dale Jr. had grabbed the lead on pit road, and he was saying they needed to keep the cars on the track so they could keep heat in the track to keep the track. I mean, here he was in a position to win the race, and he wanted to keep racing. I'm just like, man, how cool is that? How cool is that? Now, maybe he's in a position where he can do so because he's Dale Jr. and if it was a driver that wasn't in the same sort of star category as Dale Jr., they would have thought differently. But just the fact that here he has a chance after a 6.5-hour rain delay to walk away with his third win of the season, and he's sitting back wanting this race to go back green. He's a racer, man, and he's a class act. And I'm so proud of this season, and I really do think that we have a chance to match the number of wins that he did last season with the car and the piece that they brought with them to Miami. So before we get to the race preview portion of this, the website, we covered it last week. It's been revamped at dalejr.com. No new items that I can tell at the website. And they didn't have any new items at the race either. I did go to Phoenix. I won't recap my entire story, but I'm about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from here to the racetrack, where I am in Tucson to Phoenix. And I waited out the first round of the rain delays, and they were about ready to go. And they were about 15 minutes away from firing up the cars, and the rains came again, and I just couldn't stay up late based off the amount of time it would take me to get home, how long they would drive the track. So I drove home, and thankfully I was home, with plenty of time to watch the race happen live, and was glad that Junior won, was glad to see it end. Not because I wanted to see the race end and just have Junior win, but at the same time, it was almost 10 o'clock, and I had to work the next day, and I was tired from all the walking. But at the races, they didn't really have anything in 2016 in the merchandise tent there. I was a little bit bummed out. I was hoping to get a new paint scheme T-shirt, and they didn't have any. They did have some Windows 10 gear. They had some Valvoline gear, but I'm not sure if they're going to be running those paint schemes next year. I did pick up a couple of die-cast cars. I got Dale Jr.'s patriotic Daytona 500 or Daytona July race win car, and I got the Windows 10 car too, so I picked those up.